Hi, I'm Jack. Welcome to the No Limits Business Lounge.
Today, we're speaking to Tom from Quilter Financial Advisors, and we're learning about his journey on becoming a successful self-employed financial planner. Great to meet you, Tom.
Good to meet you too.
How are you doing? You okay?
Yeah, good, thank you.
So thank you for coming on to the podcast today. As I say to all guests when I first see them, I like to keep things natural, not scripted, although I've got a piece of paper here with a bit of writing. I probably can't read most of it. Mm-hmm. The only rule I have on this podcast is there's no limits. So I'll ask as many questions as I want, and you have to answer, and vice versa. You get one veto. So if there is a question that you are uncomfortable with, just say veto. Yeah?
Yeah.
Great. So why don't you tell me a little bit about what you're doing and your company?
So I'm a financial planner. I think you probably know that already. I'm a sole trader, so I work under the Quilter Financial Advisors branding, but ultimately it's my business. So I've got a few outsourced power planners that do my report writing for me. Hopefully by the end of this year, I will have an admin assistant coming in to take over a bit of the admin work that we're also doing. But ultimately, it's just me as a sole advisor in the business looking after my client bank.
So were you employed in the past?
Previously, yes. I was employed for 5.5 years at a financial planning company in Manchester that then expanded into Cheshire, and that was ultimately where kind of my office was based, was in Nantwich, where I've ended up moving to and living. But I started off there as an admin assistant in 2017 as part of my degree, and then moved into power planning and report writing, and then naturally kind of started moving more into the more complex side of IHT planning, estate planning, trust planning, all that kind of fun stuff. And then naturally stepped into being an advisor in 2020. So I've been an advisor for 5-ish years now.
Okay, so in your current role as a sole trader / business owner, how long have you been doing that for?
Nearly 3 years. So January 2022 was when we started.
The first question I have is, what made you transition to employed to doing that? Because that's a risk in itself, right?
Yeah, I'd always said when I first ever came into the industry, even right at the start, before I even knew that I was going to be an advisor, that I always saw myself as a business owner. So after kind of 5.5 years of being employed, the company had grown to kind of very big in comparison to what I started at. It was 10 people when I started, and there was about 35 or 40 of us when I left. And it had become very corporate, and for me, I started to get frustrated. It didn't quite feel the same, and I just thought back to, I always said I was going to do it on my own, and it was kind of now or never really. What I didn't want to do was stay employed for another 5 or 10 years, and always think back and think, well, why didn't you jump at it then? And it was, I was 28 at the time. I think it might have been 27, and I thought, well, if it goes wrong, I can always come and ask for my job back.
Yeah.
Luckily I've now to go back and ask for my job back.
So what were you getting frustrated with specifically?
Corporate hierarchy more than anything. So, the chains become unmanageable. You can't really get to talk to the people that you need to speak to. Service started to slip as the company grew, and it wasn't quite fair that my clients got a different service to one of the other advisors' clients. So ultimately I just thought, I can have a bash at this on my own and probably do a better job.
You said you always wanted to actually have your own business, become an entrepreneur, and you felt as if you already had that skill set. So talk to me about that. What made you think that?
I think I just had confidence in myself, that I knew I was a good advisor, and I knew I connected well with people. I'd started to really build my network around me in terms of going to different networking meetings and whatnot and building those professional connections. So I was somewhat confident that network itself would provide enough for me to go and have a go on my own at least. So from that perspective, everything else you can learn along the way ultimately.
So the network that you said you had around you, that's quite an important thing with whichever industry you're in, right? It doesn't matter if you're in financial planning industry, in the legal sector, whatever, network's important. Yeah. So tell me about your network.
So professionally, so I've got a group in Altrincham in Manchester that I've been part of for kind of like 4.5 years now. So that was one of the first ones, if not the first group that I ever joined, even as a brand new advisor straight out of the blocks. And that kind of transitioned into, I joined another one in Nantwich when I moved there, but kept the Altrincham one going because I'd built some really good friendships and connections in that group with, you know, the accountant and the lawyers that come to them and whatnot, and the mortgage brokers, which, you know, we all work incredibly well together. And then that kind of just branched out more into community stuff. So within Nantwich, I joined the Rotary Club, and then I became a trustee at the food bank. So it was more kind of community-based stuff. So it was really just getting to know pretty much all the local business owners within the area, and you know, through the other networking groups that I joined.
So you're getting your face out there, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's been a couple of years then. What would you say has been the toughest challenge you've faced in starting your business?
What I find the most difficult, or what I've started to realise is what I miss, is that, you know, 99% of the time is you're working on your own. Yeah. You know, there isn't anyone else around you.
I love that.
Unless, you know, you've got other advisors. You know, the phone calls that I generally love from other advisors when they ring you and say, Tom, I've got a client, and then, you know, say, go on, tell me the story. What would you do? But you're on your own 90% of the time, and that's the bit that sometimes I can struggle with. If I'm feeling a bit low on motivation, or I'm struggling to, you know, pick up something to go and do it, is, you know, you don't have kind of someone you can just shout across to the office for and say, you know, let's just have a conversation or kind of pick your brains on this. Sometimes you kind of just sat there looking at it thinking, okay, come on, get going.
So would you say that's your biggest challenge that you face though? Because obviously I've been in the same sort of boat. And again, it might be different personalities, but I never felt as if that was a challenge. I prefer that, but again, that's probably my way of working.
Yeah, I think for me, I do like being around people, and again, it probably comes with the job, but you do find sometimes a lot of the time you're at home, you're on your own, the scenery's not changed, unless you're out and about seeing clients. Sometimes it can be that.
So it's more of a mental challenge.
Yeah, that can be quite isolating. However, if I'm out on the road seeing clients all day, then, you know, I'm happy as ever, more than anything. You know, I don't generally struggle with kind of client generation, lead generation, stuff like that. That's nothing, you know, I do enough networking to get out there and speak to enough people that, you know, there is generally always something coming in from some point of view. So I don't struggle from that point of view. Obviously keeping, you know, making sure the business gets done, it goes through on time and we all get paid is, you know, that's always the struggle with business, really.
Yeah. And you mentioned you're self-employed, so you're not a limited company?
Not yet, no.
So why did you choose that route?
The reason I did that was when I left my employed role, I had no clients, I had nothing. And when I went out to the market and I started looking for kind of where my next home was going to be and where I was going to set up as a self-employed advisor, what Quilter offered on the sole trader side was help with lead generation. Ultimately, they provide a kind of a steady stream of what we call affinity leads. So we are the preferred financial advisor to all the public sector schemes and about 30 different trade unions. So you've got the opportunity there to speak to clients and, you know, hopefully generate some business from it. And that's exactly what I needed.
So it's a bit of a kickstart then.
That's exactly what I needed at the time. Coming with 0 clients, a network that I was confident would produce, but just needed that little bit more just to keep it consistent. And that's exactly what they could provide on that side of it. What I could have done is gone across into the network and set up as, you know, a limited company, but that support wasn't there. So for me, it was, well, let's go and do that for the first few years.
So build first, then...
Build it first, and then there's a couple of advisors that I work with within Quilter that I think we could work together. We could potentially set up together. And there's a couple of people outside of the network as well where I just think we complement each other in the way that we work. You know, I don't do mortgages, so someone that does do mortgages is an ideal person to go with. So from that perspective, you know, it's going to get to a point probably fairly soon in the next couple of years where I'm at capacity and I need another advisor there to help me increase that capacity so we can keep taking on new clients.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest challenges a lot of people face, what you mentioned. The reason why you went as a sole trader route is you get that sort of help with lead generation and business development. And I think that's probably the number one issue for anyone in our industry. And it's funny because I was actually speaking to someone from Quilter last week over Zoom. So one of the things that I tend to do is a lot of mentoring. So I'm currently mentoring about 15 people, 2 of whom are from Quilter. So I was speaking to this person last week, and they've been doing the job for about 4 years. And they're still having business development issues.
Yeah.
So that, to me, screams out there's an issue from an academy level. Do you see the same problems? And if so, what are the solutions?
I see exactly the same problems. And what I quite like about the way that I came through the industry is that it was almost like an apprenticeship without calling it an apprenticeship. Started off in admin, paraplanning, advisor. So you build all that knowledge the way through. And then almost immediately when I qualified, I started networking. I think I might have even started slightly before. But it was going out there, building those connections, getting your face out there, and building those particularly professional connections. So your accountants, your solicitors, your family law people, these are the people that are really going to help you generate business, and you're probably going to be able to pass stuff back to them as well. What I tend to see with a lot of the academy stuff is that they throw you through your exams, and then it's like, there you go, out into the big wide world. And not one of them has ever stepped foot in an accountant's office. They've never been to a networking meeting. They don't know where to go for them. So from that side of it, they don't have anyone to call on. They haven't got any sources of leads coming in. And it's really difficult to then say, right, go and do it.
Well, that's funny, because I'm probably in a bit of a disagreement with you here in terms of that approach. And again, it might just be different styles. Because I see a lot of what comes out of the academy, and I'm involved with different academies and mentoring, right? For them to be told, go out and get a professional connection, an accountant, a solicitor, a mortgage advisor, real estate agent, I just think that's bollocks. It worked 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Now, if you approach a solicitor who can potentially give you leads, that solicitor's working with 15 different people already. It's difficult to find one. And if people are coming fresh out of the academy and they're asked to go and build them, I think that's jumping from here to there without actually developing any business development skills. So that's where I get what you're saying. It could work, but the ratio of when it's working is so low from what I see. And the prime example was the chap I spoke to last week. He's built these connections, but he doesn't know how to actually get the leads.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah, I think what I tend to see with kind of the networking groups that I go to, obviously you always get like a 10-minute slot every few weeks or so to tell people what you do. And it's just about showing exactly what you do in that 8-minute slot that you've got, where you add value to your clients and where they can pick up on opportunities. What you tend to find with other people is that they don't know what they're looking for. So if it's teaching them what it is that you're looking
so it's
for.
The skills.
Yeah,
right?
What you're looking for in a good client. Well, what would be a good client to your business? It'd be different for all of us. But it's teaching them what to look out for and where we add value doing that for them.
Yeah, so absolutely. So going back to professional connections, it's fine, all well and good saying build it, but it's the steps on how to build that. That's what's missing.
Yeah.
And the industry is a bit of a dinosaur industry because it's teaching methods from 20 years ago that don't work. You can't do what worked 20 years ago today. No. It doesn't work. And that's probably my frustration. I think we're quite young. Well, I like to think I'm young anyway. Seeing all of this frustrates the crap out of me. It really does. Hence why I do so much of the mentoring. So now you're established, or would you say still growing?
Still growing, I would say. I don't think I'm far away for being established from that perspective. I'm probably at 50% capacity, so I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm too far away from it, but it's been, it probably, when I first started, it probably took, a good 6 months to really get the wheels back in motion. After 12 months, it was, things were moving. Last year was really good, and this year's been, okay, can't complain at it. So from that perspective, it's been pretty consistent. So I think from that perspective, I'm happy to say, we're still growing. And
is your focus on building funds under management?
Yes.
Then? So just for people that may not be aware, funds under management basically means how much money do you manage for your clients, right? So what are you on now, and where are you hoping to get to?
We're between 10 and 11 million at the moment, and I would like to, in the next 3 years, be at about between 25 and 30. And that would be the kind of the sweet spot for me.
And would that be basically you established?
Yeah, I think so. At that point, I think an advisor can only look after so many clients, and if you take on too many clients, then the service drops, and it stops being that personal service that we want to provide. You just, there's not enough of you to provide it, and this is where standards start to fall and clients get annoyed. So an advisor can only look after maybe 150 clients. you know, and provide a good service. So once you're at that kind of level, at that point, I think I would stop taking on new clients and I would become almost just a servicing advisor ultimately to those families that I've took on.
So what you said there about the amount of clients and the servicing level, that's so prevalent for, I don't want to be ageist, but I'm going to be ageist, right? For younger advisors, they do really focus on that. I genuinely know older advisors and business owners who have 600 clients, 400 clients, and I just think you can't be, it's impossible to service that many people. Impossible. So that's where there's a big shift in mindset, right? So in your time growing, was there ever a point where you thought, do you know what, this might not work because of X, Y, Z?
No.
So you're always confident.
Always confident that I can make it work. Even if times get tough, I know I can make it work.
So why did you have that self-belief? What made you have that self-belief?
I don't know. I think it's just innate. I think it's just something that's just in your head. You've just got to back yourself in life sometimes. And I think that was, it was a big decision to go self-employed. So, and I think, sometimes you've just got to take the leap with it.
Yeah.
And, if at any point I did question myself, then I don't know what I'd do. It's never crossed my mind to even think this might not work.
It's interesting because, again, I go back to people that are newer to the industry or sort of 1, 2, 3 years in. I often hear, I'm out of my depth, or this might not work, I need to think of something else. I hear that quite a lot. And for me, that's just a mindset.
Yeah.
Because I'm the same as you. I've never once thought it wasn't going to work out. But it's that mindset. So, for example, if we have a meeting with a potential client, right, and this happened to me again last week with someone from the academy. I did the meeting. They were observing. On the face of it, right, and I don't mind sharing. I'm obviously not going to say the client's name, but this client, she had nothing. She was in debt, had nothing for me to work with. She was only 28. No needs, right? So after the meeting, the mentee who was observing said, there was nothing in that. But during the meeting, I still have to do my job.
Yeah.
I still have to do my job. It's not a 5-minute, say, piss off. No, it's me doing my job. And towards the end of the meeting, we were still talking about, okay, what's around her? She introduced me to her parents, who are sat on about £2 million. So the learning objective for the mentee was, don't dismiss. I go into every single meeting as if they are an opportunity, no matter what. Yeah. And if I'd had that person's mindset, I would not have received that referral.
No.
And that's what I think is, quite a big challenge for a lot of people that are coming into the industry, that mindset shift of don't always think negative, think positive, and just believe that you can actually do it. Yeah. So if you could go back then, let's say to the start of your journey, whether that's the start of you being a business owner or in the industry, would you do anything different?
No, I really like the way that I've come through this industry. Yeah. I think it's given me the knowledge and the backing that I needed to go self-employed, and then ultimately once we do start, a limited company firm, we've got the backing and the knowledge to do that as well. So I'm quite proud of the way that I've come through it, actually.
Yeah. So is it just you, or do you have anyone employed at all?
No one employed, but I've got outsourced power planners. Yeah, so they do my report writing for me.
Okay. Now, in terms of the industry, then there's quite a lot of changes that are flying about. Some I like, some I don't like. But are you noticing any sort of trends at the moment in the industry?
Servicing's always been a massive thing anyway, hasn't it? However, the networks now
it's a bit stupid that, so people, when we say servicing, by the way, people might not understand. Servicing is us taking on a client and looking after them, making sure that we're in touch with them, reviewing their investments, seeing if there's changes, etc., etc. So it's what we would do anyway.
Yeah.
That's our minimum level. It's a bit sad that this had to be brought up. And again,
Yeah.
we go back to the age brackets, because there was a significant amount of people in the older age bracket that thought servicing was not important. Right. So I just wanted to clarify that. But yeah, go on. Tell me about the trends.
That's obviously a massive topic at the moment, and it has been for the past kind of 2 years, whilst the FCA's been hot on the back of it. That trend, will continue. I don't think that will ever actually go away. I think they will always keep on top of that now, knowing that people hadn't been seen for years and were still paying a fee for it. I think that trend will continue. I think what I'm starting to see is, especially with younger advisors, a lot more of a focus on being holistic as a planner, or all encompassing. So I used to teach a lot of advisors how to use cash flow modelling. I've always used it, for like 8 years. It isn't new to me. It's not new. It's not new at all. But it seems to be to everybody else. So bringing that into it is a massive trend that I'm seeing at the moment. Incorporating cash flow modelling into every single review meeting. I'm seeing it pushed more and more by the networks, as well as advisors coming to me saying, "What system do you use? How do I use it? What's the benefits of doing it?" So I see a lot more kind of holistic planning from that side come in. I'm massive on tax year end planning, tax year beginning planning. 80% of my client bank is limited company directors, so we're doing it at least twice a year anyway, because we do corporate year end and we do personal tax year end. So for me, I'm seeing a lot more advisors starting to move towards doing things like that, because it's an opportunity. Ultimately, it's a way to keep your clients sticky. You don't want to just speak to them once a year and have tea and biscuits and say, well, your funds did 6%. What do you do? What you want to be doing is providing real value for them, and if that means you've got to speak to them 4, 5, 6 times a year, then that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the trends that I've been seeing a lot recently, it's linked to the industry, but it's not our industry. It's a lot of these groups, I call them little cults, right, that have started DIY. So DIY people, right? And there's one on Facebook who really, they make me grit my teeth. Their whole proposition is, okay, you don't need planners, you don't need advisors, you don't need XYZ, you can do it yourself. Just follow our model. It's one shoe fits all approach. If you follow us, you'll save on fees and you'll get an extra 0.5% a year, 1% every year, right? That's the trend I see. What do you say about that? What's your take on it?
It's not always about cost. Ultimately, you've got to look at what value you're getting out of it as well. Ultimately, with a planner, we're out there spotting opportunities for you that you might not even know about it. So, for a young investor, maybe going into a passive ETF of some kind is the right type of fund to be going into. But for someone who's 60, 65, who's spent all of their life building these funds, then actually it's less about growth and more about protection on the downside. So from that perspective, you might use an active approach to your investment fund. Now, you wouldn't know that unless you spoke to somebody. These groups aren't going to tell you that. They're just going to tell you, we'll just keep putting your money into Vanguard's life strategy funds.
It's the one that I see. It's the Vanguard Global All Cap. But anyway, it annoys me, because if we look at every other industry in life, right, you can do everything yourself if you want to. So, for example, if you're in need of a lawyer, well, don't pay for a lawyer. Do it yourself. If you want to fit out a new kitchen, don't pay kitchen fitters, don't pay Wren, don't pay Howdens or whoever. Do it yourself. But you're not going to do it yourself because you pay for a level service. So in our industry, I don't know why these people, there's a lot of them, they're so fixated on costs, but you're paying for a service.
Yeah.
I always say, do you expect it for free? I don't understand. Yes, you might save on fees, but you're getting value. And if you're not getting value, then you need another chat, right? And that's something that I highlight with quite a lot of my clients. The value I am providing you is X, Y, Z. This is what you're getting from me. So I think these Facebook groups, it's a bit dangerous, because we're taught in a professional capacity, okay, no one client is the same, right? They've got different attitude to risk. So I don't know if you do this, but I go through a questionnaire, ask them about risk and capacity for loss, all of this, right? And then they might come out as low risk, medium risk, high risk, whatever. These groups are all throwing everyone in, and one person messaged me from that group who's super low risk, right? But she's in 100% equities, and that's high risk. So I said, well, that doesn't make sense. Oh, the Facebook group advised me to do this. It's just bizarre. So that's one trend I've seen. And that leads me on to my next question. What misconceptions do you see about our sector then?
A lot. We probably are one of the least trusted professions in the country. And what I think people get wrong about us is that they still think everyone's a salesman. Everyone's just out there to sell you something ultimately. And we are salespeople, ultimately. We are selling something at the end of the day. But that's not what it's all about. It genuinely is. For me, going into that meeting with a client and knowing that I can make their life better, genuinely make it better with the service that we offer. It's not about selling a pension at the end of the day. It's about understanding what that person wants at the end of it. I don't really care how much money a client's got, because until you kind of had that meeting with them and you understand what they're actually trying to get out of it, we don't know whether or not they've got enough until we start to build that plan for them. But I think there's a lot of misconceptions around, we're all out just to money grab essentially. And I don't think that's right at all.
Where do you think that's come from?
Mis-selling scandals in the past, all the PPI stuff. There was a lot of financial advisors prior to us needing to be qualified to some extent. There was 300,000 advisors back in the 80s, and now there's 25,000 of us, 30,000. Back then, it was a case of you saw an advisor outside the bank or Tesco's, they sold you something and you never saw them again. That's not what it's like anymore. I think there's still a lot of distrust in that happening. You think that you're never gonna see them again.
And I think people need to understand the level of scrutiny and regulation we are under, right? We've had to go through the strictest of exams to be qualified. We have to do continuous development.
Yeah.
We have to adapt to continuous changes, right? And everything we do is scrutinized to the highest level, and people don't see that.
No.
People don't see that, and I agree with you. It is a generational thing, and this is where I probably sound like I hate these dinosaurs, but they have tainted the industry because I don't know. Are you a football fan?
No.
Okay, so I'm a huge football fan. There's a YouTube podcast called Stick to Football. This isn't a sponsorship, but I'm open to it. But Gary Neville, Jamie Carragher, Ian Wright, Roy Keane, and Jill Scott, they were talking about this particular issue because there was a study done with a lot of footballers who come out back in the 80s and 90s who were told to move their Professional Footballers Association pension over.
Yeah.
And there's about 125 of them. They all lost the money because they were invested through Lithuania and all these dodgy places. That's not what this industry is now. No. It can never be that now.
I think it's really hard nowadays to get bad advice.
Yeah.
Because of the scrutiny that we're under. People don't see the compliance teams that are sat in the background that are continuously monitoring, I'd say 90% of the stuff that we do.
Yeah.
Not everything gets checked to the same scrutiny. Ultimately, they trust us to do a good job. But a lot of it is checked and checked again before it even gets back to the client for us to say, good to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And what happened back in the 90s and 80s, right? That can never happen now. It just can't. And if anyone tried, it's an obvious scam.
Yeah.
Right? I signed a client up a few years ago who, before seeing me, he was being told to invest in aloe vera plants and farms and stuff like that. And he said, I noticed it was a scam straight away.
Yeah.
It's obvious.
Yeah, I've seen car parks in Dubai and those type of things that clients have come up with, and Bitcoin scams and whatnot.
Yeah. So the advice for people is, if you are speaking to someone, make sure they are FCA regulated, make sure they have the qualifications, right? And the biggest one for me is word of mouth. Speak to people who they've worked with.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science, but we're trying to fix the image. We've been left to do that.
Yeah. I don't know if you do as well, vouched for as well, and that's always on the bottom of my email signatures, and it's public anyway. So if clients want to go and check you out, they can do. They can see what your other clients are saying about you.
Absolutely, yeah. So where do you think the industry is heading in the next 5 years or so?
Most advisors, I think we're gonna see a lot of clients shifting over to younger planners, mainly because advisors are just retiring in droves. So, what's the average age of a financial planner now? 58, 59.
Yeah.
They're all kind of retiring in the next 5 years or so. So we'll see a lot of consolidation into the big consolidators, True Potential, Quilter, SJP.
Well, for me, I just see a massive opportunity. You mentioned earlier the number of financial planners in the industry now is so low, and it's going to become even lower in the next 5 years because so many of the dinosaurs are leaving.
Yeah.
And it's all well and good. If I didn't care, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to clean up, but I do care. So what I think the focus has to be from the professional bodies is a route to the industry, a real route. You talked about earlier
Yeah.
apprenticeship, right? Who's doing what to provide that route through? I don't see enough being done. And this is where I've got an issue with the Personal Finance Society, big one, because they're all doing it for self-gratification, in my opinion, because they're not actually they've got all these shows, but what are they doing? They need to be out there in universities talking to course leaders, saying, look, let's do something. If I, a single person, managed to create a course for a university, why the flip can't they?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. When I was getting into the industry 8 years ago in 2017, there was nothing.
No.
And nothing at all. And the university kind of looked at me a bit weird when I was like, well, I want to go and do financial planning. But on the careers hub, there was nothing at all. So I had to go out and find it. And there was a guy came into the university, similar to you would, and did a talk. And he was an IFA in Manchester, just set up on his own. And I collared him at the end of the talk and said, I need to do a placement as part of my degree. Can you give me a job? And he said, I can't. I've just set up on my own, but I'm part of, and you might know these, Next Gen Planners. And I went to his office, I met him, we had a chat with him, and he put me in touch with a mentor, Adam, who I still talk to this day. He's been with, kind of like by my side all the way throughout it. And he helped me write my CV, my covering letter, and it was him that sent it to a few of his contacts, and that's where I ended up going to work for one of those people.
That's what I mean. There's a bunch of us planners individually that are doing this, right? And if you see the trend, it is the younger group. When I say younger, mid age, right? It was never the older ones. They're doing this individually. We're doing this individually. Why can the professional bodies not get involved? Right? It's all fair and well they create these bloody events. There's one I got invited to. It's called a road show, right? They're pumping. They've just been given £1 million, right? And they're doing these road shows for other financial planners. I'm like, why are you spending your money on that? I don't need an event to tell me how to cash flow forecast. I can do that. And if you can't do that, you're not in the right job, right? Spend that money on the next generation, the future.
Yeah,
I think they're missing something big.
There's a lot of academies have popped up, in the last kind of 8 years, and so every network pretty much now does have their own academies. But it's like we were saying before, they're throwing them through the exams and then kind of hanging them out to dry almost, and it's not enough.
No.
There's those business development skills that we've talked about need to be learnt as well. The sales side of it, the sales skills.
I've looked into all the academies, and there's fundamental flaws, because ultimately I don't want to single people out, but the trainers who are training them, they've got massive areas of improvement required. Because if they've never done the job or never developed business or never advised, how can they be training? It makes no sense.
No.
Right? I've highlighted it to the individual academies, including the Quilter one. And honestly, I'm that frustrated that I'm actually creating my own academy now. It's nothing to do, it's not, I'm not hiring people. My academy is purely skills. I'm not going to tell you anything about exams, technical knowledge and everything. You go do that yourself. But my 12-week program will be developing the skills so that you can actually go out and do your job. And I think that's so important. So we spoke about where we think the industry is heading. What would be the positives? So if anyone's listening and thinking, okay, career change or at uni trying to get into an industry, what are the positives of this industry?
I'm biased here, but what job in the world do you get to go and spend all day talking about your clients' hopes and dreams and ambitions and helping them get to do it? I don't think there's anything better than that. You know, the negative side to that is, you know, there's a lot of paperwork, but what other job in the world do you get to go and it's the most positive job in the world.
It can be positive, but it's hard, isn't it?
It's hard work, but being able to have those conversations and watch your clients achieve all them goals that they've been talking about to you for however many years, and pushing them to do it sometimes when, you know, you keep telling you that they want to go on this dream holiday to Australia and it's 3 years down the line and they've still not been. And eventually you've just got to say, do you know what, I'm just going to send you the money. You're going to go.
For me, it's what this industry gives me is financial freedom and time. I can manage my own time. And the financial freedom, I think that's important because a lot of jobs and a lot of industries, you're working so that you can live. Whereas I think you should be living and then work. And that's what this job gives us.
What it gives me is, like you say, freedom to do what I want with my own time. You know, my diary is my diary. I work it to my own thing. So if I need to be somewhere on a Tuesday afternoon at 3:00, well, then I'm going to be there. You know, I can work my diary around me. It allows you to do, you know, to work when you want, essentially, work to what fits you. If you work better at 4:00 in the morning till 8:00 in the morning, do that. If you work better at 8:00 at night till midnight, we'll do that. It's completely up to you how you want to work it. And that freedom, you can't put a price on it.
No, definitely. So you mentioned funds under management. You've got 10/11 million, and we've spoke about where you want to get to. Give us an indication to what that 10 to 11 million gives you in terms of monetary wise.
Ongoing fees wise, it probably generates about 75,000 a year in ongoing fees.
And that's without even writing any new business. Okay. So that's a flavour of once you stick at it and you get to a level, it gives you great financial freedom.
You know, obviously the network take a cut of it, so you don't get all of that yourself, but it's at least, you know, every month there's something coming in.
So what do you get from the network?
They take, for self-generated business, they take it. So I probably have to explain my contract a little bit too. So the standard contracts, they take 40% of the ongoing. If it's self-generated, they take 50% if it's a leader that they pasture. However, there's tiers within my contract of, if you do more than kind of 40 grand in new pension and investment business, you get an extra 10%.
Right.
So you start to get some of it back. So, you know, the maximum.
Bloody complicated model.
It's complicated, but, you know, if you're doing over, you know, 100,000 a year in new pension and investment business, your splits can be kind of like 85% to you. So, you know, you are incentivized to find new clients and do more business. They don't incentivize servicing advisors, essentially ones that are just sat on big client banks. Although other advisors may have negotiated a separate contract. I don't know if we're all on the same.
And in terms of clients, then, you know, what's your biggest client? How, you know, do you focus on the high net worth, or is it a case of just anyone and everyone?
There's a real mixture. So my biggest client, I look after just over 2 million for her. She's only young. That case came from, it was an NHS negligence case, so she sued the NHS and won. However, they caused permanent damage to her eyes, so she will go blind in the next few years. So that one was, you know, I'd say it's an anomaly. You don't come across those, you know, personal injury trust type cases every day. But the majority of my client bank is limited business owners, limited company directors, lots of different sectors, and retirees. So people who are kind of, you know, within 5 years of retiring, and or they are retired.
So
and I deal with a lot of like young entrepreneurs as well. So like you said, the client that you saw the other day had nothing. Well, young entrepreneurs generally have nothing, but they've got a great business, they've got income, they've got capacity, and they just need a little bit of guidance. So, you know, I will start with them from nothing, even if it's just setting up a new pension to put 300 quid a month into. It's building the behaviour that they need to build to get them to where they need to be, and ultimately, and then reviewing things like, you know, the business protection side of it.
So I know why working with business owners is a great model, but why don't you tell us why?
For me, you've got the business plan inside of it
Yeah.
to start with. So, if it's a young entrepreneur who's just started the business, it's just getting some traction, is that they probably don't have any assets themselves for us to do anything with, but they've got this great model that it's going to eventually start to generate lots of income for them. And for me, you can review the business side of it first. So it's, putting in place things like relevant life policies, a death in service policies, executive income protection. You might look at the shareholders agreement and maybe do some shareholder protection if there's more than one director. So from that side of it, we can work with these people and get paid for it. So it doesn't cost the client anything apart from, if they're going to set the policies up, obviously.
Yeah.
It costs them the monthly premium, but we get commission off the back of that, which for me allows me to work with those people whilst they're not particularly profitable on the wealth side of it. And then eventually they will start to build those funds under management and they will start to become profitable on that side. So you've got the business planning side of it that you can do first with them, and then you've got the personal side that you can then move into. So for me, it keeps it exciting because there's more than one thing to go at ultimately.
Yeah. So moving on, before we move on, if the HMRC are listening, my income is £12,570 a year. So moving away from the industry, what's a story that you've never shared publicly, work-related or about a client?
My journey's been shared quite publicly, to be honest.
That's good because you don't get a lot of people. I mean, I was in a similar boat. I was never open, really. And I recently got invited to a podcast and I shared a client story, which, for some reason it's just spread across the whole industry. I don't know if you heard about it, the iron brew can.
No.
So this is when I was young, starting off in the industry, and I was one of those where I had no filter. I'd just go and do it. So there was one client who's a Scottish fella that I really wanted as a client. I don't know why. I just wanted him, right? I flew over to Luxembourg. He was delivering a conference. It was a tech summit conference, right? And I flew over there, never spoke to him, never met him. And I thought, okay, I'm going to stand by the side of the stage with an iron brew can, because this is a Scottish thing, right? So as he walked off the stage, he noticed and he walked up to me. And we just had a conversation for 20 minutes. And then at the end of the 20 minutes, I said, look, could we have a chat? Half an hour to an hour, right? I was only 25, I think, right? He became a huge client for me. He was the CEO of Vodafone Luxembourg, so he's very high up. He ended up being a client, and obviously when you've got a client of that caliber, the referrals are ridiculous at that point. So I shared that story and I went public with it, and I thought, I didn't realize that's something that should be shared.
Yeah.
And I would urge a lot of people who are in a position where they've got stories like that, share, because you never know, someone might have an idea from it, right? So that's kind of something. But I had a disaster moment, which I'll share, because it got fixed in then, but bloody hell, it was bad. So I was helping a lady consolidate her pensions, right? And it was about 250 to 280, around there, that figure. £1,000, right? So it was being transferred from Reassure over to ourselves, and I don't know if you've dealt with Reassure, but pain in the arse to deal with, right?
You've just made me think of a story, actually.
They're just horrible to deal with. So they said, okay, they've released the funds, they'll be sent within 3 working days, blah, blah, blah. So I thought, okay, fine. And it was just before the Christmas break. So I went on holiday. So I went to Singapore and Malaysia. I'm on holiday. I thought, okay, it must be done because they said 3 working days. I get back and I'm just, as you get back after the new year, you're just tying up loose ends, seeing what needs to be done. So I looked at my client list and I can't see her funds. I'm thinking, what's happened here? So call the admin team and say, can you just find out what's going on? Reassure say they've sent it. We've not received it. Don't know what's going on. That's 250 grand. It's just gone missing. So they're saying, we can't do nothing about it. We're saying, well, it's not come to us, so where is it? Like, no one could find it, which is incredible. So long story short, what had happened, Reassure sent it to the wrong account. Like, they actually sent it to the wrong account. So when they're transferring funds, they're doing it through backs, right? They're giving account details. They sent it to a random account. I couldn't believe that.
Yeah.
So obviously there was compensation, etc. But yeah, why don't you tell us?
No, similar, Reassure. So I got a client he had about 4 different pensions. I'm moving the other 2 now at the moment. But I met this client 2 years ago, and they had 2 pensions with Reassure, one with the People's Pension, which is his work pension, and then I think one with the Pro. And we were consolidating them together, and you write to Reassure, you try to get all the information. They take about 2 months to do anything. And it was back and forth, and multiple complaints. They were, constantly sending in compensation and thinking, why didn't you just send us the information? And got it all through compliance, went and signed it up, pushed the button on it, and then I got a note from Quilter to say, Reassure have just told us that this pension's got enhanced tax-free cash on it. And I'm like, well, they've not told us that. And I went back through all the paperwork, and not anywhere did it state that it had it. And when we rang them up and says, why didn't you tell us? And they said, well, you asked if it had any benefits on it, and we don't class it as a benefit, so we didn't tell you. So we then had to cancel everything before they sent the money, otherwise the client would have lost out on the enhanced tax-free cash. And it's took us 20 months from that point to get them to release the enhanced tax-free cash to the client separately, so we can move the remainder of it to a drawdown pot. And that's just going through now after 20 months. It took me 20 months to get them just to send a 1-page document that told us what the process was. What did we need to do?
I always say if you're with Reassure, just speak to someone, because they are awful to deal with. So moving on then, tell me about what a typical day looks like for you then. Apart from today you're here, but
today's a different one. So generally I'll be up anywhere between kind of like 5 and 7 in the morning. I usually will grab my phone first. I won't grab the laptop immediately, and we'll just check to see kind of what emails have come in overnight, if anything's come through, and then it'll be checking for the week ahead. Have I got any servicing meetings coming up? What do I need to start to put together for those meetings? And then it will depend what I've got on the day. Every day is different. It might be that I've got 2 new client meetings that are in, Manchester or on Zoom or wherever it might be. Do the meetings, send all the paperwork off that we need to send after it, if it's letters of authority, if it's, anything else that might need doing. And, ultimately finish up at whatever time. It can really vary. Sometimes I was probably working till 1:30 in the morning last night, but that's not normal. It's not every night. So and then some days I might finish at 4.
Yeah, so it's adaptable then.
Yeah.
Do you have a partner in your life?
Yes. I've got
who's around you? So talk to me about that.
So I've got a fiance called Maisie. She is, we've been together since we were 14. So, 17 years we've been together. We get married in February, and she's due to have a baby in November as well.
First one?
First one.
Oh. Well, I could tell you your business journey is going to change quite a lot then. So what's her role been in this? Because what people often don't see when you are starting your own business, you're taking huge risks, and it impacts the dynamics of your life.
Yeah.
So what's her role been?
I'll tell you a story about when we were younger. So being a financial planner is a second career to me. So I'm a failed plumber. So I did 3 years of a plumbing apprenticeship when I was younger, worked for 2 different companies, and I hated it with a passion. But I didn't know what to do, and I was sat on the end of my bed one morning with my head in my hands, saying like, I don't want to go to work anymore. And she just tapped me on the shoulder and she just said, quit. And I went, okay, I'll do that. And I went and quit that day, and I finished, did my notice period out. But that's what spurred me to go back to college and retrain, and that's what got me into university. I did accounting, that then led to financial planning, but it all stemmed from that one tap on the shoulder to say, we'll just do something different. And that's what I did. And when I was getting really frustrated when I was employed as a financial planner, again, she said, why don't you look at going self-employed, and I remember having, when going through the process of kind of, choosing which network to go with, I was on a meeting going through one of the business plans that I'd done with one of them, and I came out of the room and she was sat on the stairs crying, and she was like, I didn't understand how passionate kind of you were about what you were doing, and again, just kind of pushed me to kind of, it is definitely the right thing to go and do with it.
So it's fair to say the major decisions about your career, she's definitely been behind
always
it.
backed it, yeah, always.
So how important do you think it is to have someone by your side like that?
Really important. Otherwise, you would question yourself. I think because she's been behind me so much and never questioned me as to why I was doing it, ultimately she's let me make my own decisions and or mistakes, whatever they might turn out to be, without prejudice. And she's never kind of sat there and said, is it the right thing to do? She's always said, keep going.
So this might go back to what we said earlier about, you've had that self-belief and you've never sort of had to question yourself or question whether you're doing the right thing. It's all down to Maisie then, so shout out to Maisie.
Definitely, it really is. I think having someone behind you that does back you like that, it really does cement that you're doing the right thing for yourself. If you've got someone in the background nibbling at your ear saying, this is getting stressful, it already is stressful enough without someone telling you that.
No. What's the best piece of advice someone's given you then? And I'll give you my one, but what's the best piece of advice for you?
But the worst piece of advice I ever got told was to be a plumber. The best piece of advice I've ever been given, I couldn't tell you. There's nothing that springs to mind.
No.
That is really poignant more than anything.
So I've mentioned this before a few times, but this wasn't advice. It was a comment that was made by someone called Dominic years ago to me, and it's always stuck with me, and I've used this and I've kind of elaborated on it. So when I say it first, it might sound wrong, but let me elaborate. Okay. So he once just said, don't spend less, earn more. Don't spend less, earn more. And that's so strong because on the face of it, that might be might sound a bit greedy, right? Don't spend less, earn more. But that's so important, especially with things in this country.
It's the right mindset to have, though.
Exactly. It goes back to mindset.
It goes back to mindset. So the problem that you find with a lot of people is that they are doing 9-to-5 jobs, and it is hard to say to someone like that, just earn more money, because if there's no overtime and there's no bonus structure, then they can't.
But that's where I disagree, because where there's a will, there's a way. There's always something that you can do.
What they've then got to get into the mindset, it's the entrepreneurial mindset, isn't it? To say, well, you can't earn any more money in your job, but there's loads of other things you could go and do in your spare time that could earn you some money.
Yeah. So the way I see it, I'm going to elaborate on that point, right? Don't spend less, earn more. So if there's something that I really want, if there's a watch I want, or a car I want, or a new house or a new kitchen, right? I've got to work for it. I've got to earn more to give me that. I can't just go to Goldsmiths and take out a finance agreement paying 125 quid. That's not that's a con. Now, the advice that I give to people who are 9-to-5 and unemployed, right? They might reply and say, well, how can I earn more? I can't. There's no overtime. I can't do. I had this conversation with someone who does a 9-to-5 job that doesn't have overtime, and I said to them, tell me right now, what things are you paying for each month? Subscriptions. They reel them off, the typical ones. Or Netflix, gym, I'm paying Klarna for this, I'm paying another subscription for my magazine, or etc. They had like 10 or 11. I said, if you want to earn more, get rid of your Netflix. If you're serious about it, because you can't get nothing without grafting. Mm-hmm. And if you're spending an hour a day or 2 hours a day watching Netflix series, that's an hour or two that you could do something else, right? So this is where I refer it to as widening the gap. If you're spending, let's say, £1,000 a month and you're earning £1,100 a month, increase that gap. So you don't have to increase the £1,100 straight away, but reduce the 1,000 by getting rid of crap. That's what I refer to as. Yeah. So finally, outside of business, what things are you passionate about? What do you do? Let's learn more about you.
So it's funny that you asked this question, actually. So over the last, I don't know, 8 years or so, my focus has purely been on business. I haven't really done anything personally. I kind of almost forgot what I actually liked.
Sacrificed a lot.
Everything was just work, and business. And that's what it's been for the past 3 years. Even a lot of the networking that I do is all business based. And it wasn't until earlier this year I was like, I'm going to go and buy myself a new car. And I, not had a nice car for myself. We'd shared a car for years, and I've not had a nice one for myself for years. So I was like, do you know what? I did well last year. I'm going to treat myself. So I went and bought a Maserati in January, and then I was like, I could start going to more car things with the car. And then I did my motorbike theory test in March, and then found out Maisie was pregnant about 5 days later. So the bike fund that I had then soon changed to baby fund. But it was things like that where I thought, when I was younger, I used to ride bikes all the time. I had a crosser, I can ride a geared bike. And for years and years and years, I've not done it. And I'm like, why haven't you done that? Go and do it again. So I did my theory because now there's a clock. I have to do my test within the next 2 years. So I will, hopefully next year, get it done after the baby's born. And I started to build a bit more of myself, and then get back out on the motorbikes again.
Good luck with it, but this is what the industry does give you if you are doing it right.
Yeah.
It gives you this freedom. But lovely speaking to you, mate.
Thank you.